So this is a recording of my talk that I'm preparing for Japan Dreamin in January 2020. And it's about 3 or more ways to bulk update records using a flow. So I've got one flow and I'm going to show you how I'm going to update multiple records, bulk update multiple records with that flow. The details of this talk, including full instructions of how I've set it up and a link to the video, can be found at this bit.ly address. So this org is a Spring 20 preview, a Scratch org. So it is on Spring 20 already, even though we are before Spring 20, and is a developer org, and it has the Dreamhouse app installed. So I'm just using the properties feature object of the Dreamhouse app to show this feature. So the reason for this talk is that I often have, for my clients, ways that I need to update data in bulk, especially key data that have got complex calculations behind the scenes. And quite often these complex calculations will not allow formulas to be done because of the 5,000 character compile limit on formulas. So often, as I've done here, I create the formulas as, in this case, currency fields or text fields, and use a workflow, a flow, code, or even just process builder to update this data. In bulk updating your data, you want a really consistent way to update either one record or multiple records with the same code or flow behind the scenes. You want it to be within limits, the Salesforce limits, so there's no errors that occur. You want it to be easy for admins to do, and then also easy for users to do. You want it to be easy for admins to update if the business logic changes. So in all cases, we've got to have a scenario and a reason for why we're doing this. And this is a completely imaginary scenario. So whilst I've been preparing this demo, there's been massive bushfires raging in Australia. And the way we pay for our fire services is via a levy payable to the local fire services. I've used this scenario as an imaginary scenario to say that you pay this levy when you buy a new house. And then my scenario is that, imagine if the federal government also put a levy on top of the existing local government and state levies to allow for bushfire recovery and regeneration of forests and national assets. If they put a national levy on top, and that national levy was really complex to calculate. Again, this is a very imaginary scenario, but we've got to have something a little bit sort of close to what a complex scenario would be to be able to show this flow and the way I've set this up. So I've got, on selling a house, I've got a price, a base price, and an assessed value. So the taxes or the levies are only worked out on the assessed value, which is given to you by the land council. And I've got a complex scenario that calculates the local government fire levy and the state fire levy. And then, say next week, the national fire levy is going to come into effect, and we need to bulk update our prices to cater for the national levy. So in all cases when we've got a complex scenario, I ask my clients to provide me with a spreadsheet. So this allows my clients and myself to see exactly how the calculations work, and that if we change the calculations, we've always got this sheet to come back to and some sample values. So here is my sample values of assessed value, base price. We add the levy for the local government, which is this price. We add the state levy based on the assessed value, which is this price. And then we're going to have this national fire levy. And the national fire levy is a more complex calculation where they're going to double dip and take the levy based off the base price, and then also based off the base price plus the local government plus the state levy, and then apply the tax on top of that. Again, imaginary scenario. So this is the basis of my calculations. And to do that, as you can see, I've got all of my pricing fields in my property are just currency fields. They're not formulas, because we end up with lots of formulas that go over the 5,000 compiled character limit. So on each property is linked to a local government area, and on the local government area record, we've got a fire levy percentage. And then each house or property is in a state. So we've got the state here of Victoria. And so then I've got a custom metadata type with the levy rates for each state. I've only built 2 states here. We've only got 6 states and 2 territories in Australia. So it's not onerous to build custom metadata types like this. However, if you're in the US with so many more states, you might not do it this way. And so here I've got a new national fire levy. So if we have a look at our New South Wales fire levy, I've got a state of New South Wales in here, and I've got the levy rate of 1.257. And if I have a look at my national fire levy, I've got no state, and at the moment, no rate, and that's the one that we're going to update. I've got a flow that I have built, which is called Calc Pricing, and it's an auto launch flow, and it looks pretty complex. This is a bit more complex than what I would normally build as a flow, because I've really detailed it out to show you how I've calculated the levies. So basically, I'm getting the details from the property. Has it got a levy rate on the account record or the local government area record? I'm getting the levy for each of the states, and imagine that would get much more complex if it was a multiple states. So therefore, you'd probably do that as a subflow or even an invocable method in Apex to get that information from the custom metadata types. And then if I determine which state it is and assign the levy rate that we're going to be using based on the state. I work out, has it got the local government levy? And I calculate the local government levy, and then I calculate the state levy, and then I've got, does it have a national levy? If so, I calculate the national levy, and in the very end, I update the property record with all of the details, and I also update this update pricing field to false, because that's key as to how this process works, is that we trigger this process working by changing this update pricing field to true. Now, so this is a flow, and it's an auto launch flow, so it needs to be launched by something. And this is just a process builder that is just a very simple criteria that says if this update pricing checkbox field is true and changed, then we're going to call the subflow Calc Pricing and pass in the record ID. Okay, so that's very simple. Now I thought with the new features in Spring 20, we might be able to use the new feature of the before update flow triggers and bypass the process builder. Because I don't know about you, but I don't particularly like process builder that much. And unfortunately we can't, because we can't call another flow. So this is a before update flow, and you can see the elements there. There's not that many elements. All we can do is assign values, and when that value is saved, then the values in the assignment are going to be the new values. We can get records, we can get sort of look up information from custom metadata types or anything like that, and we can assign values. That's all we can do. We can't call a subflow. But if you think about it, this is a before trigger, in inverted commas trigger, and so it doesn't make sense that a before trigger would then be able to call a flow which does all sorts of other things you can't control in a before context. So that's why we will stick with process builder after the record is updated, and if the value is of update pricing is true, then we're going to call this Calc Pricing flow, which is an auto launch flow. But wait, there is a way to do it. So I have done a separate video showing you how to rebuild this flow for Spring 20 to use the Great Year feature for before updates. So I'll link the video here. So in all cases, you want a quick, simple way to update these values for one record, or update these values for multiple records. So let's just start by looking at the standard ways of updating these records. I've got this update pricing checkbox here, and let's change our base price to 950. And if I check the update pricing, you can see here the last date the pricing was updated was today at 7:30, and we're going to change that. We're going to save that. The update pricing will run. It will set that checkbox back to false, set the pricing updated field to right now, and it's updated our new asking price. So again, we'll set our price back to 960. We'll do the update pricing and hit save. Now, of course, there's many other ways you can do that. You can have the flow run based on if a price changes, but we'll see as we go on why it's useful to have this checkbox. It's not useful to have this checkbox down the bottom here. So I've got these couple of extra features set up. So the first one is a quick action, and I've just got a little conditional component here. And this is a quick action, which has just got the fields on there that we would most likely change. So say if I wanted to up that discount by to $5,000, and I check update pricing, and that's a really quick action that we can do that updates the pricing. So it's $837, and then the asking price is now down by $5,000. So that's a really nice way of doing it. And then the next way I've got is another conditional component, which is just a flow. And this is a screen flow, and we can see that screen flow in our flows list. And there is nothing to this screen flow. It is just that Boolean value of update pricing. But having a flow here that's on the screen, that it's either conditionally shown or always on the screen or controlled by a button, you can then build much more information into that screen. Like you can check to say that pricing should only ever be updated when the status is available. So you can ensure that the pricing, this flow can't be run unless the status is available, because you never want the price to change after the price is sold. So a flow is very useful in this scenario. And in this case, I've just got the checkbox. I go next, and that updates my pricing as of right now. So that's useful for one record. Now let's go to our list of available properties. Again, we only ever want to update our available properties. So we can treat this like an Excel spreadsheet. So we can come here and we can say, okay, the list price, the base, we want to change the base price. The base price of that one is now up to 1 million. Okay, and then we can say update pricing on that one and hit save. And that pricing will update 839. So we can just reset the column width so we can see that better. And so we can do that on multiple records. We can select multiple fields, multiple records, select that update pricing, choose update 3 selected items, hit save, and all of those will be updated. We can also run a flow for multiple records. So here's our update pricing, but be very careful with this. This is that quick action that was on the page. If I change this, the base price of every single record I've selected is going to change. So this is dangerous. We don't want this. But what we could do is we could do a quick update pricing, which is just update the pricing, save that, and it will update those 3 records. I tend to find that checking these checkboxes can get a little fiddly, So having a quick update pricing, quick action there is a nice way that we can just either bulk update, quick update pricing, update our pricing, and away we go there. So this sort of scenario here is really useful for a sales rep to update their pricing when they might have my available properties, and they can control, you might have the discount on this page also, and they can control the discount, control the asking price. And I've got some details around some extras that they can include in. So I've got gas, heater and carpet included in the price, and these extras are not subject to any levies, so that's why I can do that. And you'll notice my flow also writes out all of the things that are included in the levies and the extras, so that we can include that on the contract documentation. Again, really important part of selling a house. Okay, so I've only got 12 records here, and that's not a lot of records to update, but what if I had thousands of records to update or hundreds of records to update? Anything over 50 records in this screen becomes really difficult to update. So this is like an Excel spreadsheet. So what if we actually had an Excel spreadsheet to be able to update these records? So here's an Excel spreadsheet, and this is an Excel spreadsheet based on a Salesforce report. And I'm using a tool called Enabler for Excel, or Excel Connector. It goes by a couple of different names. And it is an absolutely fantastic tool where I can just run a Salesforce report and it brings it into an Excel spreadsheet like this. So I'm already connected up, logged in, and I can just refresh this report. And the last date and time we updated one of our records was at 8:40. So I'm going to see here the latest date and time we've updated. So again, we could set this up to do our updates as an admin and update all of our available properties, or we could do a My Available Properties report and allow sales reps to update this. Excel Connector comes with some features that allows you to lock down cells so that only sales reps can update key fields. Takes a little bit of setup, but it's a really good feature. So here, say I've got my assessed value on this one changes to 752,000 now, and I want to update the discount by another $1,000 just to offset that. So I can say here true, and I can just say I can update one record or I can update multiple records. So let's just do update selected. And once you set this bit up, it becomes, it saves it for the next time. So this is just mapping our fields. So it's very similar to how you map the fields in Data Loader. So here we've got the record ID, and we're going to choose to update using the property ID. We're going to update the assessed value, and we're going to update that update pricing to true. Okay, and in this case, there's going to be one record update, and you can see here I can set the batch size. So the batch size is really important to set when we've got really complex scenarios that might go over limits if too many records are updated at once. So we can, in this case, we're only updating one record. It doesn't have any issues. But if we update multiple records, we could set that batch size to 1, say for example, or 5 or 10. We can just control that as we do our updates. Okay, so as we updated it told us that it was a success, and this is the record it updated, and this is the date time it updated, but it doesn't refresh the values again. So we have to just refresh our report, and it shows us the latest values that it's updated. So there's that 844. So this is a fabulous tool, and I just absolutely love it. Quickly and easily update our records, and we'll come back to this to do our bulk update at the end after we add the extra fire levy. The next tool is a standard Salesforce feature that came out in Winter 20, which is the ability to run scheduled flows. So this is a scheduled flow, and it's the most simplest flow you can see. It is got a start node, and it's calling the subflow for calc pricing. This scheduled flow is happening once on the 29th of January at 12 a.m. Just once. We can set it to run daily or weekly. So again, when we've got a scenario like this where we've got to have our data updated regularly, having a scheduled update is really a good idea. And we're updating the property object where the status equals available. Now that is a really simple condition. But what I found with this feature and why I don't like it is because I did it and I stuffed it up. My conditions weren't set right, and I accidentally updated a whole lot of old records and ran this flow on a whole lot of old records. So my scenario, the first time I used this, was not good. So what I do recommend you do is, because there is no way to see, you just got this conditions. There's no way to see these records. There is nothing in this flow that can show you what those records are. So the best thing to do is to create a report that has exactly the same criteria as this flow, so you can always check before you run this flow as to what records it's going to work on. The other thing that is pretty annoying about this type of flow is every single time after it runs, that's it. You have to, if you want to run it again on an ad hoc basis, you have to resave the flow as a new version. A little bit of a hassle. So it's like it's a good that it's there, but I'm just not sure it's really a great feature at the moment, because there are some really great tools out there like Enabler and like this next one I'm going to show you. So this next tool, the third tool I'm going to show you, is called Mass Action Scheduler. So this is a tool that's written by Doug Ayres, who was a Salesforce MVP community member and is now working at Salesforce. You might have heard of declarative roll-up summaries by Andy Fawcett, who again built his product as a Salesforce community member and now works for Salesforce. Doug has gone down that similar route. So being a community app, doesn't have proper support. It's got community support. It may have infrequent updates. So you have to take these apps as they come. But for me, this tool is so good, so useful, so configurable. Excel Connector is my number one tool. Mass Action Scheduler is my number two tool that I go to for doing bulk updates of records. So let's have a look. There's a little bit of setup that you have to do beforehand, but once you set that up once, it's done. And this tool is so flexible, we're only going to look at one scenario of it. So this is an on-demand mass action configuration that's using a source type of a report that's running a process builder and calling Calc Pricing. So again, in this scenario, that we've got a batch size of 1. One of the other things you can't do with these bulk update pricing, you can't control the batch size. The flow that you run there is going to run once for every single record that's passed into it. So on that criteria, every single record comes into this flow, and that subflow is going to be run once. So it might hit limits if you've got large flows, or you've got flows that call invocable apex or something like that. So again, that might be a bit of a limit. Whereas in a mass action configuration, you can have it that runs on a batch size of 1, or you can have it that runs on a batch size of 200 if your flow is set up to enable bulk updates of data. So that's a really good feature. So we've named our configuration, we've set it to be active, we've got a batch size, we're basing it on our report, and here's our report. Now the details about the reports are it has to be a tabular format only, so no grouping and no matrices, and it has to have a report column which is uniquely identifies each record. And this great little new feature here, which will go quickly to the report, And so here's our simple report, and our filter is status equals available. And that's my simplest filter you could have, but again, you can build a report with all the filters that you need. And we've got just a simple list report with a property ID as the first column. You don't even need these other values. It's just there to show you what you need to see, and I'm also reusing that same report for Enabler for Excel. And I go next, in here I'm choosing to run a process builder or flow, and the flow that I'm running is the Calc Pricing. So again, you can see that I've got the one flow, and I'm running it from a process builder, and I'm running it from the mass action scheduler, and via the process builder, via the field update, I'm also running it from Enabler for Excel. So this one flow, this one field is doing all of these different scenarios. In this case, the flow is called directly. There is no process builder in between. So the flow in this case can run probably a little bit faster. So we're running the calculation, the Calc Pricing flow, and we're passing in the property ID into the record ID. Okay, and we're going to do this on demand. There's some really absolutely great scheduling features on this frequency on this tool, and it's fantastic. So, and we can just hit run and run that. So why don't we do that? Well, let's update everything. So I'm going to run this mass action configuration, which is update pricing, and we go next and we go finish. This is a pretty simple flow. So you can see it's got a batch job processing, and it's processed 5 batches already. And before we could even have the time to refresh this list, if we refresh this list, it now says 12, but you may notice our notification appeared here to say that it was complete. Okay, so here's our notification, mass action scheduler completed. And when you've got overnight processing done or weekly processing, having those alerts there are very useful because you can quickly come in and just see. And the logging on this tool is amazing. The logging on Enabler is okay, it tells you the success, but if you don't save the spreadsheet, you don't keep that, whereas this mass action has got all the previously logged information. So this is a really, really cool tool to do this sort of bulk update. Okay, now let's come back to our, if we look at our available properties report and refresh that now, every single available property has now been updated, and you can see that 852, 853. Okay, now if we go come back to Excel and refresh our report, that's going to give us exactly the same data. And we can see all of our different fire levies for local government and state based on the state, the Sydney City Council, New South Wales State. And we can see here we've got one very different one. I thought, where is the place that the fires would most likely not be in Australia? And I've had to go way offshore onto an Australian territory. And so here we can see that we've got no fire levies in this local government area. And so the calculation still works exactly the same, but it just takes in different scenarios from the custom metadata types that are available to that record to give us the calculation. Because again, we build that sort of stuff into our flow for the calculation. Okay, so going back to our scenario, we are going to update our custom metadata type with a national fire levy. So we always go back to our spreadsheet, because I've asked my clients to give me my spreadsheet to say what is the new thing based on 2020. Our new national fire levy is that. So never trust myself to do this. We want to copy that record, and we're going to pass in our levy rate of 1.057, and we'll have no state. So this is the national levy. Okay, our flow has already been set up to accommodate this. And we are going to now run this calculation. So let's run it on from here. I'm going to update our pricing on all these records to true. You can do true or you can do 1. And we're going to say select them all, or you can just use update all. I always tend to use selected, but you can always use update all. So updating selected, and in this case, we're not changing the assessed value. We're just doing the update pricing. That's all we're doing. We're updating that one pricing field to true. That's going to run the process builder for each record. With our batch size, we're going to say our batch size is back to 200, so the 12 will run all at once. It's going to then run the flow. The process builder is going to call the flow, and the flow is going to calculate each record and update our records. And immediately after we've run that, we can refresh our report again. And we can see now that we've got the national fire levy on each property, and we've got the pricing has been updated, and we've got our pricing updated at 2056. And if we come back to our sales app, we come back to our properties, come back to our available properties. Of course, we can see the details there. You might want to wrap that text. We can see the details here, and we can come back into another record and we can see those details there and say, oh look, I think we need a bit of a discount on that one, and update our pricing again and hit save. So you can see how flexible that is. We at any point in time, we know when the latest pricing date is updated. It's easy to update. It's easy to update from an external value. So the value here was, because we changed the discount here, that's easy to update. We can have a process that runs behind the scenes on this change. But when we updated the custom metadata type, that was an external value. So we need to now recalculate every single record to include that external value, so that that is now included in our calculations. So once again, to summarize, our 3+ tools to update our bulk update our available properties are quick actions, quick update pricing here, where we've just got the one checkbox to update, to run the process builder, to run the flow, to calculate the data. We've got our wonderful mass actions configurations tool, mass action scheduler tool, that's got the mass action configurations that run on demand whenever we would like, or we can schedule that to run at any point in time. We have our bulk update pricing flow, which is a scheduled flow that we can run with the conditions on the property object, and it just runs through this Calc Pricing subflow for each and every record that's passed into it based on those conditions. Or we can use a tool like Enabler for Excel, which is a fabulous tool to quickly update our pricing. So we can say update our pricing to true, update all, update. Again, that's 12 records. Imagine that 200 records, 2,000 records. The amount of records I've used in this tool is quite amazing. I could do another whole 40-minute video on this tool. I could do another whole 40-minute video on mass action scheduler, and even more about quick actions and flows. But that's just a little glimpse into just 3 tools that I've used to update my properties, update my records in a bulk way, allow individual records, individual users, admins, and bulk updating, all with a one flow that is easy to for the admin to maintain. So I hope that helps.